This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. So tonight we are continuing with the second class of the reward and punishment. Location: everyone is invited to join us every Thursday at BJX at 1601 Quentin Road. That's the right address, right? Okay. Every woman is invited to... You figure out how many times I say this. I still can't get it right. Okay. So tonight we're continuing. Last time we recorded, which was 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the reward and punishment. We actually are going to break this up into 3 classes. I was originally planning on doing this on 1, but for some reason, God wanted it to be into 3. And why I say God wanted it to be into 3 is because last week we had a different. Last time we were here, we had a different group that was coming in, and then we had to end early. And this week, I was like, you know what? I want to speak about this particular, subject. And next we're going to speak about it. We're going to break it up, the reward and punishment, into these three different classes. It is a very, very important subject. What? I don't know. Could be. Yeah. Okay. Oh, but first I have to make an announcement. So, 2 weeks ago when we were here, I may or may have not gone on a tangent on an airline that may or may not rhyme with Shel Al. No, but apparently they heard my class. I did fly in Halal. So I was going. So you know what? Whoever didn't listen, just go listen to last week's class. Whatever. It was a therapeutic class for me. Let's just say that. So I'm waiting online in the airport in JFK. Right? I'm waiting over there, and my suitcase may or may not be very much overweight. Right? And I'm thinking about it, and as I'm waiting online, I'm like, oh my gosh. I just spoke about, like a few days ago, I just gave a whole class on what they do with the overweight and how they may or may not rhyme with something called schmazis, it was a situation. And in my mind, I'm like, this is it. So I'm like, I did tshuva over there, and then I'm thinking, and I'm like this, I was a body overweight, I was overweight. And I'm like, so I see... My wife was standing in front of me, and I see she starts saying Tehillim. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That's a sign for me. She didn't even say anything to me. I just see her, starting to mumble under her breath. Either Tehillim or it was a curse, but she doesn't know any curses. So it was Tehillim. So I'm going over there, and I'm thinking, so what is a Jew supposed to do when you're in a situation like this? You say Tehillim, but there's also a very, very good skula to know that if you're ever in this airline, or it's something always good to know if you're ever in a situation, is there's 3 words you repeat to yourself. You think to yourself, En od milvado. There is nothing other than God. There's only God, and if it's supposed to be overweight, it's going to be overweight. The last thing that I wanted is for them to I have to take off my suitcase. I have to unravel this, the zipper, open it up. Everybody, please gather, so you can see everything that I have packed. And it's just the last thing the headache that I want. So I'm like, okay, God, and my wife is saying Tehillim, and we get on over there, and to the courtesy that I have to the Shmel Al, airline, it really was. It probably was my best experience ever. They were like, please make sure next time you're not so overweight because this is really, really bad. And I'm like, thank you. like we have a round of applause over here. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, I've flown many, many times. And then what? They just let it go. With God's mercy, they just let it go. So. Yeah. So last week we went. So I had to start off when I was thinking about it. They let it go because I went on such a tangent last week. I have to give a hakarat tov, a thank you and now I have to say their name. I'm sure you guys couldn't figure it out what it was, but I have to say a very, very big thank you to the El Al community. A clap, a round of applause for El Al. It happens to be that when you're flying an El Al and you flew on any other airline, or if you flew enough, you see a difference in security. You really see a difference in security. You go over there, there's somebody comes up and he's like, hello, my name is Yossi, I am going to be the security guard checking in. Just some random Israeli guy just walking through the aisles, eyeballs you, and be like, passport, please, and you give him the passport, and you go, and me and my wife are giving him, and the questions that he asks, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure. I'm like, I packed my own suitcase. Did anybody, they give all the regular stuff. Did anybody go, and then they ask you some personal questions, right? They come with a little tissue box and be like, like the therapist all of a sudden, and you're like, when did your mother stop loving you? I'd be like, what? Like, that never happened. No, my mother always loves me. Have a tissue. Like, thank you, Yossi. And over there, it happens to be the guy that actually, his name was Yossi. So, but the when you're going on over there, and obviously only God protects, but the questions that they ask and the level of security that they have, it's really something. Like, I flew with many other airlines. When you fly with El Al, you really do feel like a sense of security. If someone's really tanned, like, you're gonna get pulled over for a random check. It's fine. I'm totally fine with that, with that. But in any case, so a shout out to, I guess this class of reward and punishment is going to shout out to El Al, which technically does teach you whenever you fly, it's always about reward and punishment. Are you going to be sitting next to a person who is 350 pounds, or are you going to have an empty seat next to you? Are you going to sit in the newer planes, which have some leg rooms, or the older planes, which basically every time the person sneezes in front of you, 2 rows, you feel it, right? There's a little vibration that's going on, right? So it's all based on God. It's all based on reward and punishment. Okay, so now with that useless introduction, let us continue to the topic at hand of reward and punishment. So, the foundation of Judaism, one of the main foundations of Judaism, is that you get reward for the good deeds that you do, and you get punished for the bad things that you do, or for the not good things that you're supposed to do, as well. So, meaning that if you are supposed to do a good deed, if you had a positive commandment that you were supposed to do, and you didn't do that, that's also a violation of the command. You also have to do tshuva for that. So, for example, there is a positive commandment of a man to put on tefillin. So one might think, okay, if I didn't put on tefillin, then maybe all I did was I just didn't get the reward. No. There is something that you have to actually do tshuva for that. You have to actually do repentance on that for the fact that you didn't do a positive commandment. Now, when dealing with reward and punishment, people think that they do something good, and now all of a sudden God owes them. Have you ever known anybody? You ever had a friend who thought like this? Right? It's always a friend. Yeah. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. I just did this and this. God owes me. Like, of course I'm going to find. My shidduch is going to be knocking on the door. I'd be like, he's going to be coming in shining armor. And there's going to be a 14-carat real diamond of 1 carat with 14 carats along there, because I love carats. And he's going to go in there and he's going to be like, I have only dreamed about meeting you. And he's going to give you a whole, a spiel, and everything's going to be beautiful. And then doves are going to fly out. Roses are going to sprout from the ground. And he's going to take off his armor. He's going to be wearing a suit with a little white flower over there. And he's going to say, will you please marry me? And you, of course, say, you're crazy, and you'll slam the door because I've never met you before. But thinking about the fairy tale land, right? Like, this is what you expect. When you do something good, like all of a sudden, God is going to just bestow upon me all this goodness and greatness and that I deserve. The way that it works is that when God goes and gives you life, there's nothing that you can do to deserve that. You can't say, okay, well, I did so much great now God owes me. Just the fact that God gave you the ability to be alive in this world, that automatically there's nothing that God owes you. That's it. Like everything you do, God, out of His own kindness, out of His own mercy, is going to go and pay you for the good things that you did. But it's not because you deserve it and you earned it because you're a good person. It's like somebody that you save their life, and then you give them panasa, and then you set them up with a shidduch, and then you help their children, and you do everything for them from A to Z, and then you ask them if they could just change your light bulb. And they go to change your light bulb, and then they're going to give you a little receipt. Be like, okay, you owe me some money for. Are you kidding me? Like, I gave you everything. I'm going to pay you for going and turning in a light bulb. So the same thing with God. When we're dealing with reward and punishment, it's not because we deserve it and we earn it. That's all based on God's mercy. The question that is asked is, why isn't it that the Torah doesn't speak about reward openly? You ever think about that? Where does the Torah speak about Olam Haba? Where does the Torah speak about Gan Eden? Where does the Torah speak about when we die after 120, we're going to have a fabulous time. It's going to be amazing. Where does it speak about that? And the answer is it doesn't. Now, why not? Why doesn't the Torah go and speak about these things openly? So, before we get to the Rambam's answer, Maimonides' answers, the Parshat Bechukotai does say something. It says that if you follow God's commandments, if you follow this, then you'll have good. If you don't follow God's commandments, then it's going to be very difficult and very bad for you. However, says the Rambam, that's not referring to reward. That's expenses. So let's say that you're a business owner, and you have a few salesmen out in the field. And each of these salesmen has a company credit card. You'll review the bills at the end of the month. One bill for 1 month is $100,000 for one salesman. Another salesman has a bill for $10,000. You're going to have to fire one person. Who are you going to fire? Or are you going to go and ask other questions? Okay, no one knows here anybody. Well,
I don't get it.
so you have...
They spent money on their own personal stuff?
No, it's a company card. No one knows, right? You're going to ask questions. Before you ask questions, you're going to also look at something. What are you going to look at? Not what they spend on, because who cares what they spend on, but what they brought in. So let's say somebody went and spent $100 grand on the company card, but he brought in net revenue of $1 million. So you're going to say, hey, listen, what did you do that for? No, he wined and dined, whatever it is that he did it. It doesn't matter. He's worth it. He actually spent the money, but he actually brought in a lot of more revenue. But let's say you have another guy, another salesman, that spent 10 grand on that same monthly, credit card, but he brought in $0, or he lost clients, on his, whatever it is, right? Shlomal, right? Shlomil, whatever it is, he lost, money on it. So what are you going to do before you go? It doesn't matter the amount of money that they spend. It matters the amount of money that they brought in. If the amount of money brought in actually makes sense and it correlates to what they spent out, then you're like, okay, that's awesome. Not only do you don't penalize them for spending $100,000, you give them a bonus because you did a great job. But for another person that spent even less money, so that you didn't gain anything from it. There's no tachlis over here. You didn't bring anything in. Because of that you're going to have to come out of your paycheck, blah, 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 anything else, or fire, or so on and so forth. So when God goes and God bestows goodness upon us, this is not a reward for our good deeds that we did. This is an expense for the amount of money that we need the amount of things that we need to do. So if you're going and you're accomplishing a lot spiritually, then when God is reviewing, the debit and the credit, who's here as an accountant? Nobody's an accountant? Who here wants to be an accountant? Who here is going to marry an accountant? I'm just kidding. Okay, so when you're going and when you're reviewing the debits and the credits and what you spent and what you got, it all depends on what you brought in and what you took out. So God is going to say, okay, listen, you went and you enjoyed this world, you did so many things, but what did you bring in? Did you make in blessings on the things that you enjoyed on? Did you go and you give charity of all the money that I gave you? Did you go and you spend your free time? What did you spend your free time? Did you learn a little bit? Did you listen to shiurim? Did you come on Thursday nights to classes in BJX? Or did you go to places of impurities and places of things that are not good to go? So it all depends on what you did. If you show that you're doing good, then God says, okay, listen, I'm going to keep you on the company. You're doing great. You're doing amazing. Here's more. Here's a bonus. Here's going to have some extra money. Here you're going to have some extra time in your life. Here you're going to have some extra health, and so on and so forth. So when you're looking at reward in this world, reward doesn't happen in this world. Reward, if someone does get reward in this world, let's say the righteous people, that's you think about it, that doesn't deduct from what they're getting in the next world. This is something of like they're getting interest on their good deeds. It's like a free gift so that they can do more good on this world. However, the wicked people. What about the wicked people? You see wicked people. Very famous question. What do you do when you go and you have this question presented to you? Oh, look at this wicked person. He is going and he goes against the Torah. He goes against everything. And look, he's prospering so much. He's so successful in everything that he does. So there's a pasuk in Devarim, in chapter 7, verse 10. It says, "Umishalem lisanav el panav lahavido." God goes and pays the wicked in their face to destroy them. What does that mean? Says Rashi, that God pays them for the good deeds that they did in this world. So in the next world, they have nothing. So sometimes you have wicked people that are prospering in this world, but God rewards them in this world. Righteous people, God doesn't reward them in this world. They could get reward in this world, but that doesn't come out from the reward in the next world. So when you're dealing with reward and punishment, there's a very, very interesting concept that when you deal with reward and punishment than any other of the 13 principles of faith. When you're dealing with the reward and punishment, if someone, let's say, does not believe in reward and punishment. So we know if, let's say, someone doesn't believe in God, no share in the world to come. Someone doesn't believe in the Torah, no share in the world to come. What happens if someone does not believe in reward and punishment? Do they lose their share in the world to come? And the answer is they don't. The question is why? It's so important, by the way. How important is reward and punishment? That the Rambam takes 13 principles, the 13 foundations of faith, right? And he gives 13. Right, this is what we were speaking about for the past, weeks, and through the space that we had, we took a little break from Pesach to Shavuot. But we were speaking about this so much that we know that converts, they want to convert, they need to know this. This is the basis of Judaism. The Rambam put this in 13 different, foundations. Rabbi Yosef Albo in the Sefer HaIkarim takes us and brings us into 3. Out of those 3, one of those 3 are reward and punishment. That's how important reward and punishment is. Yet, for some reason, that if someone does not believe in reward and punishment, no problem. You still have a share of the world to come. The question is why? If it's so important, if it's so fundamental to Judaism, why isn't it that if someone doesn't believe in it, doesn't he lose his share in the world to come? And the answer is, yeah.
It all depends on the individual's consciousness about it. So if you are conscious, that's why each person is, I would think, each person also would be different. Meaning your reward and punishment is completely and entirely different from his reward and punishment, based on your consciousness and his too. And the same goes to somebody who's completely clueless about it because there's no awareness of it, I would think.
So, what you said, I don't know if you realize how deep the things that you said. There's so many layers that I can break, which you're right, you're 100% right. First of all, there's somebody who could not even know about the concept of reward and punishment. And there's somebody who could, and this is where I think what you were talking about, there's somebody else who it all depends on their circumstances. Every circumstance is different, depending on the reward, depending on your upbringing, depending on so many different facets that come into play when you're dealing with reward and punishment. What you said was 100% true. Everything was, was correct. But what is very unfortunately misunderstood nowadays, and the truth is it's not only nowadays, in all days, is that when you have somebody who doesn't know something about Judaism, so in a sense you could say Tinuk Shenishba. Tinuk Shenishba means it's a soul that never knew, right? This is when I was on the airplane, and you see all these Jewish people, or they claim they're Jews, they get a free birthright trip. I don't know, I'm not going into that, right? But you have all these things who know nothing about Judaism. Nothing about Judaism. And so you say, can you blame them? Like they really don't know anything. They don't know the beginning of it. So you can't really blame them. They're known as a Tinok Shenishba. Again, we're not going to get into the topic, of it. As opposed to somebody else who knew the foundation of everything and decided to go against it. So obviously, the reward and punishment only God knows in the depths of how, how it's going to, how it's going to break down. But the bottom line is that if somebody just opens their eyes, their nose, the way that this world works, it mimics the way that the next world works. So the way that this world works is the reward and punishment. For example, you want to make money, you have to work. So if you work, you make money, and then you can spend it whatever you want. But let's say you don't work, and you're going to go steal. And be like, well, I never knew that I was not allowed to steal. Would that float in court? Of course not. I'd be like, are you kidding me? What would you expect if you want to go and you want to buy a nice dress, a nice piece of jewelry, a nice watch, whatever it is? You have to pay for it. You cannot just take it. Some things are common sense. So the same thing in the next world. You cannot just go into the next world and say like, well, I just thought everything will be okay. So even though there is a truth to the fact that there's some people that don't know, but at the same point in time, there has to be some common sense. And people have to think about life. The biggest problem is, and this is, by the way, this is a problem not for non-religious people only, for religious and non-religious at all. People go through life without thinking. People go through life just like going through the motions without taking a second to be like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be doing over here? What is the correct thing for me to do? The scariest thing is that when people are dating, for example, you're making one of the biggest decisions of your life. How do you not think? How do you not say, okay, wait, is this the right decision? Is this what this what I'm supposed to do? I have people that speak to me regarding their dating life, regarding their married life, and I'm like, I applaud these type of people. These are people that are like, okay, they're thinking. They say, okay, listen, there's something that I need to ask. This doesn't make sense. Maybe I need to get some guidance over here. That's good. That's what you're doing. But there's some people, just go with it. It's great. And then they get into a situation and then they start complaining. They're like, you have to think in life. In life, you really, really have to think. At the end of the day, the truth is everything is from God. But we have to do our ishtadlut. But in any case...
That's the way God explains you. That there's this extremely emotional female who she thinks, but her emotions are entangled in her more than her logic, and therefore she gets messed up. That's her limit. Let's say, I don't want to call it consciousness, but that's where she stands with just her emotions completely override. That's how she was created.
So, which is a great point. So let me repeat that because that is a great point. Let's say someone was created a certain way. So you use the example of emotional, and it's not instability. It's emotional heightness, like emotional. Everything is very, very emotional. So you have some women that, and it could be some men also. It's not only associated with just women that are very, very emotionally on steroids. They're like always like someone looks at them and they're like my soulmate just saw me today, and then you have you have her best friend who has the emotional stability level of a 3-year-old. See, someone looked at him and they're like that piece of lovely person, whatever it is, another bunch of other nice words that come out of him. So you have two people seeing the same thing and they each come out of a different thing based on their emotional upbringing. Now we could use an example of that book, for example, that book regarding anger. So let's say somebody's born angry. Someone's born in extreme anger, be like, is it his fault that he was born this way? He's an angry person. They're like, no, just because you're born a certain way doesn't mean that you're absolved from, societal rules. Like you have to follow, you still have to, so if an angry person was born an angry person, it doesn't give an excuse to be angry. So the same thing with emotions. If someone's too emotional, then it's something they need to work on. Not saying that it's bad, it's good.
It's like connected to what you said before about reward and punishment. Only God knows. So God knows that someone who's, let's say, very emotional about things, that it's more of a struggle for them, so they get more of a reward when they choose to.
100%. 100%. God takes everything into account. We're not God's accountant. We cannot say you're going to get punished for this and you're going to get rewarded for this. It's only in God's hands. What we could say is the Torah says this, and if you don't follow it, you're going to get punished. The level of the punishment, that's all in God's head. But what we could know is there's no one who could say, listen, I'm absolved because I am born X, Y, and Z. No. The Torah says.
You can't say that because you're conscious enough to acknowledge that.
We can't say that because regardless of your conscious level, it doesn't matter. Whatever the Torah says stands as something that stands beyond time, beyond your emotions, beyond your intellect, beyond anything else. It's as simple as A plus B equals C, whatever it is. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. But it's as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. But how you plug it in and what you deal with and all your upbringing, that God deals with. That is in God's hands. So now we ask the question that the question is, why isn't that if you don't believe in reward and punishment, do you not lose your share in the world to come? So the Rambam Maimonides goes and says that if someone does something, let's say someone's a good person, and they do something, not because the Torah says that it's good, and not because they're going to get reward from it. Now, I should actually rephrase that. That they're doing something because they know the Torah says that they need to do it. So are you going to punish them because they don't believe in reward and punishment? They're doing something good. In fact, they're doing something that is inherently good. And this is what the Rambam says.
What does that mean, that they're doing something?
They're doing something because
they
of.
know the difference between rewards and punishment.
Meaning that they're doing something that the Torah says to keep Shabbat. So they keep Shabbat. And they don't, reward or not reward, they're doing it because they need to do it. They're doing it because they know this is the right thing to do. So says the Rambam, are you going to punish them now because they're doing something for the right reasons? But they just don't know that there's reward and punishment? Of course not. So that is why the Rambam says that you don't get punished if you don't believe in reward and punishment. If you're doing something because it's inherently good, and you're not doing something because it's inherently evil, that's the right way to do it. And in fact, this is the highest level to do it. The rabbis, there are many, many stories of the rabbis. The Vilna Gaon, there's a story about the Vilna Gaon that one time there was no etolgim. There was no etolgim on Sukkot, and there was one passerby that had a lulav and a etol, and the students of the Vilna Gaon says, okay, listen, bring it to the rabbi, let the rabbi have at least a talk for the holiday. He doesn't have an talk. So the guy wasn't willing. Unless on the condition was that he will give it to the rabbi if the rabbi sells him off his reward for using the mitzvah of lulav and etol. Meaning that he's not willing to part with his etol. He says, I'll give it to him on one condition, that he gives me his reward. That's a whole question you're allowed to do it. Now, you ever hear of this? The guy a few years ago on eBay wanted to sell his share in the world to come. You ever heard of that? Yeah, there was a guy. It started off I think as 99 cents. Went to like $100,000. But there's a question. There's a logical question. Can you sell your reward to the your share in the world to come? So we're not going to get into that. But it's an interesting concept. Right. What does he say? Say, don't serve your master to get reward. Rather, serve your master because it's correct. That's the highest level. That is the highest level. So the Vilna Gaon in this story, he goes and he hears that he's willing to sell. Somebody wants to buy his reward. He's like, of course I'll do it. And he was so happy and excited to do that. So the students were asking, why are you so happy and excited to sell your reward for the mitzvah, the good commandment, the good deed that you're going to do for on Sukkot? So he said the real purpose is to do things because they're right. He says, every other good deed that I did I was doing it because I knew I was getting a reward for it. Here is something that I could do 100% for God. Nothing to do with me. I'm not getting a reward for it. He says that is the highest level of serving God. He says, how could I not be so happy and excited? So he was even more happier and more excited to do a good deed that he's not getting a reward for it than rather than doing a good deed that he does get a reward for it. But that is one answer. There's one answer saying that we do things for the right reason doesn't mean that you're going to get punished for it because you didn't believe in the reward and punishment. However, there is still a very, very interesting question that is asked, and it's brought down also in the Kuzari, that many, if not all, other religions, they speak about the next world. If you're going to come into my religion, then you're going to have 72 virgin cows, right? So you're going to have amazing, amazing reward. And it goes on and on. Every religion says what's going to be in the next world. If you're going to believe in the Messiah, then blah, 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 right? If you're going to do this, then you're going to have all, and it goes on to speak about it in eternity. But how come the Torah doesn't speak about it? How come the Torah is the only, and this is in fact one of the questions that the Kuzari, you guys are familiar with the Kuzari? So the Kuzari was a country that the king was looking for which religion to put in for his entire country. So he invited the three biggest religions at the time, the monotheistic religions. He invited Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and each one gave their own thought, whatever the ideas. But he was asking. He goes over to the rabbi who's representing Judaism. He says, I don't understand. He says, Islam, Christianity, they all tell me what's going to be in the world to come. He says, why don't you say anything what's going to be in the world to come? The truth is that the Torah does speak through hints in the world to come, meaning that.
It starts off by saying that's where they speak about Chava and
where the Torah speaks. Adam Chava speaks about Gan Eden. It doesn't speak about reward for good deeds that you do. That's going to be there.
Well, what happened when he did something bad?
So he got punished.
What happens to all the women in the future? But if they do something good, they get rewarded.
Where does it say that they get rewarded? Speaking punishment does, but reward doesn't speak about it. In the next world, reward specifically in the next world I'm talking about, not in this world. Meaning, where does it say that if you follow the Torah, you're going to get rewarded in the next world for it?
Well, reward would be opposite from punishment. If we talk about punishment, then reward has to be there. Maybe I don't know.
Okay, so you're inferring something, which is true, but why wouldn't it say straight out? The question is, why doesn't it say straight out? All the other religions, cults, say it straight out. Why doesn't Judaism do it? Oh, you want to say it infers it? You're right. It hints it? You're right. It says it even in the oral law? You're right. But why doesn't it say it in the written law? Why? And in fact, it does, even in the oral law, in the written law, it says, for example, if someone doesn't keep Shabbat, the soul gets cut off, meaning that it gets cut off from what? From the next world, meaning that there is a next world. So if you're getting punished from the next world, meaning that there is a benefit, just like you said, just like there's a negative side, there's also a positive side. But why do we got to go through all these hints and circles? Let it just say it straight out, just like all the other religions. So that is the question. Why doesn't it say it openly? So Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in the Kuzari goes and explains like this, and he says that when somebody goes and wants to make a prediction, wants to try, let's say someone's bringing up a new religion. They're making up a new religion, keyword making up a new religion. They're not going to give you a prophecy that you could check them. They're not going to say, okay, listen, in 5 years' time, X, Y, Z is going to happen. Because when in 5 years' time, X, Y, and Z does not happen, you're in the hole. And now no one's going to follow you anymore. So it's very easy to make predictions and make claims about the next world. After you die, and you smoke this pipe, and you wear a long feather hat, you're going to go into this, and you're going to become a wolf, and then there's going to be, eagle brother, and then the horse, son, and everything is going to be, everything's going to be great. But like, okay, maybe yes, maybe not. We don't know. You're speaking about the next world. You're going to blow yourself up. You're going to meet 72 very, very warm, people that, are going to greet you in the next world. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's no, a muhma didn't ever come back and be like, like what they're saying is very true. There's never somebody that comes and validates them what they say. So it's very easy to make predictions on something that you cannot check. Says the rabbi in the Kuzari, that brings out, says to the Kuzal, to the king of this country, It says Judaism makes predictions that you can't check. We're not dealing with things that you can't check. That's why they make predictions, right? There's prophecies in the Torah about the destruction of the temple. There's prophecies in the Torah about the ingathering of the exile. There's prophecies in the Torah about the Jews spreading out the entire world. There's prophecies in the Torah that the Jews are going to remain small in number. There's prophecies in the Torah that the Jews are never going to be destroyed. We deal with prophecies. Check us. Go look at that. You think we don't? We're going to deal with things that you're going to be able to check and you're going to be able to prove. Out of the next world, we're not dealing with that. That's answer number 2. That's one of the answers, yeah. The Ibn Ezra goes and says like this. And by the way, Rabbi Mordechai Becher goes and brings even more of these things. On Torah Anytime, he has a class on this. And if you want to know more answers on these things, I would strongly recommend to listen to his class on this topic. The Ibn Ezra goes and says like this, that why does the Torah hint it and not say it straight out about the reward in the next world? Because for people that are smart, a hint is enough. For people that are negative smart, let's keep it clean, that are not so smart, even saying it straight out is not going to help. Right? Have you ever had this conversation? Let's say there was a group of people, and one person starts speaking, and then they start speaking about a topic that you're like, oh no, they cannot speak about this topic. Like, it's very sensitive to the person next to it. And you're in the back and you're doing like, stop it. And you're trying to change the topic and they're like just not getting it, right? And you're throwing missiles, nuclear bombs under the table. Be like, just, don't you need to go to the bathroom? You know, like, go do cocaine in the bathroom. You know, like, you're just like trying to get them away and they're just like not getting it. Have you ever been in that situation? It was just only me? Okay, I don't know. So, you know, I was in this situation so many times. I'll give you a hint. There are ways to get out of it, and you just sort of veer the topic into different, in a different direction. You have to know how to do it very, very smart. And it's so funny because it happens to me so many times.
Can you? Because they'll come back.
No, if you do it smart, they're not gonna. If you do it smart, they're not gonna come out. I'll tell you why. Because. So in every, like, let's say, places that I speak about, I speak to different people, and I know their backgrounds, I know what they're dealing with, and sometimes there's another person that's coming in and they're speaking about it, and I'm like, okay, this is going to trigger that person. This is not going to. I'm not pointing at you, by the way. This is triggering that invisible person, and that's going to be not good. And so I have to veer very often topics away from like making sure that no one gets hurt, no one gets offended, and things like that. So I do it more often than I would want to. And to be honest, it's kind of enjoyable. It's like sort of like, let's manipulate now, like let's work our magic. But there's some people that just like nothing. Like no matter, be like, I could just like pause for a second. I'll pull down a chart and be like, you see this person right over here? You cannot talk about this topic over here because they went through blah, 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 and they're going to blah, 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 and all these things, and they're going to be like, whoa, and they're just going to keep on talking about it. Right? So some people, they don't get hints. They just don't get hints. Says the Ibn Ezra, for some people, a hint is enough. If you hint in the next world, that's enough for them. For other people, you could tell them straight out, they're not going to get it. You could say there's a next world and you get a reward for it. Be like, well, what do you mean about that? Like, the next world, you get a reward for it. But what does that mean? Like all of a sudden, goodbye. Like next person, please. Like pick another number, right? Like there's some people that just don't get it. This is how I feel when people come over to me and claim that there's no God. Claim the atheist. Be like, are you serious? Like this type of person, even if God goes over to them and goes like, psh, psh, and be like, hey, look at me. I'm God. I created the world. It must have been some psychedelic, like over here. Like I must have taken some drugs. Like no matter what happens, some people just don't get it. There's just some people don't get it. Says Ibn Ezra says like this. It says very simple. It says it's enough for the Torah to hint it. The people that are smart will get it. The people that are not smart, they're never going to get it, right? Unfortunately, may God have mercy on this one. What can I tell you? Like some people just don't get hints. That's all. That's all there is to say about it. So that's wherever answer we're up to. So the next one is, why doesn't the Torah speak about the reward in the next world? Is because sometimes when you describe something, you can ruin it. Who here has been to Niagara Falls? Okay. If let's say you hear somebody be like, oh, so you went to Niagara Falls, and you hear somebody else say, yeah, I've been to Niagara Falls. It's like a waterfall, it's like another waterfall. Be like, are you kidding me? Like a waterfall? Like what? Are you serious? A waterfall? That's crazy. Niagara Falls is unbelievable. The amount of water that falls meter per. You go on, and if you did the tour and you know what you're like, it's not a waterfall. This is like I think it's one of the wonders if it's not, it should be, right? Is it one of the 7 wonders? Right? It's unbelievable. But if you're saying it like, imagine like a big bathtub, it's like a lot of water falling down, and then like a mist, and you go on a thing called a mist, and then you wear clothes, like, I'd be like, what? You're ruining it. You're like, stop speaking. Just stop it. Like, don't be a tour guide. The last thing you should be is be a tour guide. Like, don't do it. So sometimes people can go and you can ruin it by describing it. And where I see it often, if you speak to people that it's actually overhearing it. I sometimes overhear married people speaking to single people. And what sometimes they say is like, yeah, get married, it's awesome, it's the best thing. And sometimes you say like, don't do it. Just enjoy single life. Like, trust me. Like, just wait until you're like 560 years old and then do it. Just like enjoy life. So right away I know exactly how their marriage is. The one that says do it, get married, that person's marriage is good. The one that says don't do it, just enjoy single life, that marriage is not good. Because your perception changes on how you explain something. So you can have something that is amazing, but it depends what it is. It depends on how you go and you explain, how you go and you perceive something, the way that you experience it. So somebody who doesn't enjoy Niagara Falls, I think it as a waterfall, but someone who can really enjoy it can explain it so differently. Where does this come into like a pet peeve of mine? And yes, we will go on a tangent. Where does it go in a pet peeve of mine is when you go to the kotel. So you go to the kotel, you have all these people that are, spoiler alert. Okay, so when you go and you go into the kotel and you have people that go and you hear the English tours, right? Israeli tours at least a little bit better. If anybody understands Hebrew, you go over there, okay, at least I'm doing it right. Israeli tours, you go and you overhear them and they're walking around. Everyone has one of those, cameras, over there. It may or may not be from the Far Eastern, world. And they'll be like, well, over here, we have, the wall where people put their papers in to speak to God. And be like, I'm moving along, we'll see the tunnels. And be like, oh, hold on 1 second. You're like, that's all you're going to say about the kotel? That you put papers in here to speak to God? I'm like, are you serious? What's going on over here? The sages tell us that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, will never leave the kotel. The Western world will always have the divine presence. In fact, Jerusalem was destroyed so many times, the Western world was never destroyed. The Kotel HaMa'aravi, the Western world was never destroyed. In fact, in the covenant of Abraham, the Torah tells us that the Jewish people will never be destroyed. And so too the wall, the Western wall was never destroyed. The wall is like a symbol to the Jewish people. It's through the almost 2,000 years of exile that we are, you have people through crazy danger and expense that they went to go and pray by the Western world. To say that, it's just a place that you could just put it's a holy site for the Jewish people. Like, are you kidding me? This is the connection between heaven and earth. In fact, the Kabbalist tells us that when you're praying, all prayers go to the section of the Bet HaMikdash, and from there they go to heaven. And in fact, the Kotel in English is known as the Wailing Wall. The Western Wall or the Wailing Wall. The Wailing Wall, why? It's because people are always crying over there. Why are people crying over there? Once the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, all the gates of prayers were closed. Except what? For the gate of tears. So people go to the Kotel, where the entrance is into the next world, where the entrance is where all the prayers go in, and they go over there and they sit and they cry. So it's known as the Wailing Wall. It's not the wall is crying, the people are crying, and they're not crying to the wall. They're crying to the place at the center of the place where it goes directly into the next world. Whenever a Jew goes and prays for thousands of years, where do they focus their prayer? They focus on prayer. So if you're outside of Israel, you focus into Israel. If you're in Israel, you focus into Jerusalem. If you're in Jerusalem, you're focusing into the place of Har HaBayit. So all the prayers are focused into this location. You're standing over there, right, with your little fly kite of a kippah, and you're sitting over there with your big thing, and you don't understand the level of depths of the holiness that you're standing in front of over here. And people say, well, why don't you? People do not. Sometimes it's lost in translation when people cannot begin to explain what the holiness is in this area. In fact, every single wedding, when you right before when people go on the dance of Chatan and Kala, the Chatan breaks a glass or breaks some sort of object. For what? For the Zecher L'Chuban. Zecher L'Chuban Yerushalayim. And they go and they sing Im Mishkachech Yerushalayim. They go and they remember at the happiest time of a person's life, they're remembering the destruction of the temple. They're remembering it. How many times we say L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim? How many times we say at the Passover Seder? Everything that we pray, everything that we celebrate, next year we say in Jerusalem. To say that this is just a place that you put a piece of paper in, a place that you pray, you're not utilizing it. You're misrepresenting it. It's even so important for the non-Jewish people. The non-Jewish people, they were able, in the time of Sukkot, there were 70 bulls that were offered as a korban over there. Now, what was it? It was for all the nations of the world. All the nations of the world. In fact, the sages tell us that if the Romans, who destroyed the Second Temple, knew how much benefit and gain they were getting from the temple, they would never have destroyed the temple. Because it's also for the non-Jewish people. Now, I was thinking about how to properly explain this, and then I found a 49-second video. And I remember seeing this, probably one of the tours. And this is a video of the soldiers being able to capture in the 6-day war the temple. And I think this says it more, and I really do want to show you. I haven't said that we haven't done videos here in a long time. So let's... Can you guys see that? The first time that I saw this, were you able to see it? Were you able to see it? The first time that I saw this was produces tears in your eyes. What was the fact that it produced tears in your eyes? The fact that you want to understand, what the level of the kotel is. You go and you look at the soldiers that were fighting. What were they doing when they got to the kotel? Instead of going and just moving on, you saw them sitting there and crying by the wall. Where else do you see that in history where a soldier goes and captures some sort of land and they're sitting and all of a sudden they're praying? And I guarantee you that the majority of those soldiers were not religious. They feel the holiness of it and they understand the level of it, and they're coming into the holiest place in the world and they pour out their heart. They realize, I don't know if you heard it says, we got the Rabbi. The Rabbi is in our hands. This is what the soldiers are dealing with. This is what you want to know what something is. If you go and you just explain it, sometimes you mess it up. If you want to go and say, the kotel is a place where the Jewish people come and pray and they put some notes in the wall, there's nothing to do with that. Yes, that's something that we do, that's something that we pray by. But if you understand the level of it, sometimes by explaining it, you mess it up. You just mess it up. So one of the reasons that we don't speak about in the Torah about the reward in the world to come is because we're going to mess it up. We don't have the ability to go and explain it. We don't have the ability to go and understand the depths and the beauty and the awesomeness of it. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, "Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chalek l'olam haba." Every single Jew has a share in the world to come, which is true. Unless you mess it up, and then you don't have a share in the world to come, depending on what you do. However, there is one thing that's very, very important, that not all shares are created equal. I know that there's a Rosa Parks or somebody in that community, right, would go and they say everybody was created equal. True, not arguing with that. But when you're dealing with your share in the world to come, not all shares are equal. It all depends on what you do. And what you do in this world is going to be affected what you have in the next world. The Maharal goes and says another answer, says that one of the reasons why we don't explain, why we don't have it straight out in the Torah about the world to come, is that we don't have the vocabulary to explain it. Just imagine trying to explain to somebody the color red to somebody who's blind. You can't. What are you going to say? It's like blood, what's blood? It's what's in your vein. Well, you cannot explain. There's sometimes you just don't have a vocabulary for it. Because some things in there's some things that are beyond human intellect.
But he doesn't explain it, but let's say one word and then
Thank you.
can't explain it, but there's just one word. And
I guess words
it's
won't
up to your
justify.
mind that can explain
You're answering that, or you have a question on top of that?
There's a source saying something about how it's a circle of people dancing. I just heard that something
Not familiar with that.
What's it like? I thought Charles was like it then.
Me'ein olam haba. It's like a taste of it. It doesn't. There's nothing that says. Again, we're not saying that. We're just saying right. We're just saying that. Listen, we cannot explain it even. You're saying why doesn't God could create a word that explain it? It's not the fact that there's not vocabulary to explain it, even though that's the answer that I gave. But it's also our lack of understanding. So sometimes. Think of it this way. If you have a lot of electricity, if you put it through a certain, the voltage and through a certain thing, it's just going to blow up. We just don't have the capacity to understand it. In our human intellect, in our minuscule human intellect, we cannot begin to comprehend what is reward in the next world. Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Alter was the founder of the Ger Hasidic dynasty. Somebody once came over to him and says, a student that just went off, and he says, Rabbi, I could prove to you that Judaism is false, that Torah is false. And he says in the second paragraph of Shema Yisrael, it speaks about the terrible punishments if someone deviates from the ways of the Torah, the ways of the righteousness. And he says, listen, I deviated from the way. I'm not a righteous person. And yet, you could see, I have money, I have family, I have everything good going for me. This is a proof that the Torah is false. So the rabbi looks at him and says, the fact that you know that the second pasuk in Kriyat Shema says that means that you have must at least one time in your life said Kriyat Shema. So he said, listen, Rabbi, even a sinner like me, I've been to the synagogue before, I've prayed before. So he said that you should know, this is what the rabbi told me, that all your reward that you have, whatever you received in your life until now, is inadequate for that one good deed that you did for saying Shema. We cannot even begin to comprehend it to such a level that even all the good that you have in this world cannot even begin to comprehend the one good deed that you did in your life, even though you're a sinner, even though that you're a wicked person, you go against God. So this is what speaking about this topic. We do have a few minutes, right? Yeah. Okay. Talking to myself. Okay. There's a pasuk in Shemot, chapter 30th, verse 5. It says, Poked avon avot al banim al shelishim v'al rebeim lesonav. That God goes and He visits their sins upon the third or fourth generation of those who go and hate God, per se. Meaning that God pays back third or fourth generation as a punishment. Stick with me for a second. However, the pasuk goes on, and it says in the next pasuk, "V'osa chesed la'alafim," and God does kindness for thousands of generations. Says Rashi over there, when God does kindness, He does kindness until 2,000 generations. Says Rashi in this pasuk in Shemot, and he goes and says like this. It says that when God goes and God punishes up to the fourth generation. When God rewards up to 2,000 generations. Meaning, what is the ratio? The ratio is 4 to 2,000. The ratio is 1 to 500. Meaning, I'll give you a second. Meaning that God bestows goodness 500 times greater than the badness, than the bad thing that it does. Meaning that God is 500 times more rewarding than punishment. That something is weighed, if let's say you do something which is impossible, let's say equal bad and good, the good is going to be weighed 500 pounds greater than the bad. You understand what I'm saying? You're following me so far? Okay, and this is where there's two
Is that
things.
a guarantee or like?
That's a guarantee. If you mess up, if you go, tshuva is for anything.
Like I had a friend say once, she's like, you see like good people that like are going through so much hardships and bad people that are not, and she's like, I really think it's like this, like their parents.
So let's wait on that. Yes, you could get reward on your parents, but at the end of the day, it all depends on you. So you could get a lot of reward based on your parents and based on your grand ancestors, which is possible. But at the end of the day, it's all you. It's all you, but there is help that can be up above. You had a question, right? We're going to get to that. So there is two. There's 36 sins that someone that gets karat, means they get cut off. They get cut off in the next world. Of the two, there's two positive ones: Brit Milah and Karban Pesach. So it says the Chidush Arim goes like this. It says that if someone doesn't do a Brit Milah and someone doesn't do a Karban Pesach, he gets cut off from God. But says the Chidush HaRib that if he does do these things, then he gets 500, if he gets cut off, or if he doesn't do it, then if he does do it, he gets 500 times more attached to God. It goes the other way as well. The ratio is 1 to 500. God punishes to 1, but rewards 500 times the value of that punishment. Make sense? Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Somebody gets cut off from God, then they don't, I would think, I'm not sure, it's my question. They don't feel the pleasure of being with God, but nor do they feel the pain of not being with God.
So the question is your question is actually a very, very complex and long to answer. What does it mean to get cut off, basically? What does it mean? Do you don't get reward for what you do? Is it for eternity? It's for how long? It's a whole long topic. I did give this class years ago. It's online on karet to try to explain this. There's 3 different types of karet, and how do you get, what's the level of punishment that you get for it, and what does it mean to get cut off? There's different levels, which I didn't even know if I spoke about in that class. There's people that, let's say, lose a share in the world to come, and there are people that have karet, two different categories. Losing share in the world to come is worse than karet. So there's different things and what that means and what's the ramifications on that. Too long to get into it, but I do speak about it in those classes, so if you do want to go and review that, you can go and look at that. So, okay, a few more minutes and we will be done. The question that you ask, it says in Pasuk in Tehillim. No, it doesn't say Pasuk in Tehillim. It says a Pasuk in Vayikra. It says in Leviticus, chapter 26, verse 42. It says, nope, still not. Where was I'm going to answer you? It says that God doesn't punishment. Oh, here it is. That's why I messed it. I skipped. That God does not punishment. That God. Oh, here it is. In Dvarim, you're right. Here it is. In Dvarim, chapter 24, verse 16, it says like this. It says, "Lo yamutu avot al banim, uvanim lo yamutu al avot." The children are not going to die on their father's sins, and the fathers are not going to die on the children's sins. So first of all, let's speak about what we're talking about this pasuk. This pasuk says like this: that if somebody does something bad, God could punish them in a variety of different ways. He could punish them on their money, on their health, and even on their children. Oh, but it says in the pasuk over here in Dvarim, it says that God is not going to destroy on the children based on the father's sins, or the fathers on the children's sins. So that depends. So what does it depend on? The Bamidbar Rabbah, the Midrashim go and explain that refers to adults. When you're dealing with small children can die, can be punished on the father's sins. Adults cannot get punished because they have their own free will. Why? Take it up with the Midrash in Bamidbar Rabbah, chapter 8, verse 4. But when you're dealing with easy answer for me, right? I'm like, all right, whatever, deal with it. We don't have time to go. Maybe if we have time at the end, we could expand on that. However, the dealing with ancestry, which was I think you asked that. So we do go and we do invoke ancestry on our ancestors. For example, in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 42, it says, we go and many times in our day and many prayers we go and we invoke the merits of our forefathers and even the merits of our own ancestors that are closer, our grandparents, great grandparents. So what does that entail for our ability to succeed in life? So while it does help, ancestry alone does not help. A person's own effort needs to have an effect. We have the ancestry that comes think of it as a catalyst. Think of it as something that's going to help you go and achieve whatever you need to achieve. But at the end of the day, it's all about you. It's all about whatever you're going to do. I don't know if I want to get into this topic at hand. If we switch it into the Nazi world, where sometimes, let's speak about it very briefly. Sometimes you have that, people that are very wicked, that live to a ripe old age, and they're very successful, and everything is amazing with their life. The reason why I say Nazis is that, everyone knows there's no good Nazis, right? I don't think anybody's ever met a good Nazi, right? So they're bad, but imagine they live to a ripe old age. They live with their children, they live with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they have money to support from all the things that they stole from the Jews. They're like, where's the reward and punishment? Where's the reward and punishment?
It's like the Nachash. Hashem gave him the worst punishment. Like he said, I don't want you to talk to me. Just
right.
I could eat sand. I don't want...
So that's what we said before, right? So Mishalem, God goes and pays the wicked people in their face to go and destroy them. right? Goes and destroys them, wants to go and destroy them, which is true. God could go and punish the Nazi people, whatever it is, or the wicked people by giving them all the good and benefit in this world so they don't have to deal with it in the next world. That is true, that is one answer. But the essence of what I really want to get to is that the true reward and punishment does not happen in this world. It happens in the next world. The next world is where the reward and punishment is. So whether you see somebody who's righteous that's suffering, or someone who's wicked that's prospering, that has nothing to do with everything that happens is going to happen, in the next world. To finish off, I want to finish off with two different thought process ideas. Let's call it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe goes and explains something very interesting. In Apollo 8, this was in December 24, 1968, this is the first time that the astronauts orbited the moon around both ways, right? Anybody who knows anything about, I guess, that will understand what I'm talking about. But it was when history was made. This was like a historical, moment. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe goes and says, learn something. Righteous people learn from everything. I have phone calls that I get all the time, and it could range anything from like a terrible day to a terrible dream, like where I'm talking about reality to non-reality. In life, you can learn from everything. It all depends on what you're going to be able to gain from it. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe goes and says, what do you learn from the Apollo 8 that's able to circle the moon? So you see these astronauts that are going into, they're orbiting space, and they're like in literally a different world. When they leave, they get instructions from ground control. You have the ground control says, okay, listen, you have to eat this, you go to the bathroom over here, you have to push this button, you have to go there, blah, blah. List 613 commandments, right? 248 positive commands, you have to do this. 365 negative commands, you have to do not. Whoever knows where I'm going with this, right? So there's certain things that you have to do. But what happens if, let's say, there's an astronaut that says, well, what do they know? Really, is going to make such a big difference if instead of pushing this button, I'll push this button, and you decide that as an astronaut, you're going to push this button, and be like, are you kidding me? That could be, that could result in billions of dollars of losses because you decided to push this button. But you're going to be like, okay, well, listen, I never knew. Be like, it doesn't matter whether you knew or you're not. You have people that dedicated their lives to go and study this subject, and they tell you, you push this button and you don't push this button. You eat this food and you don't eat this food. Right? You can't sneak a Snickers onto the moon and be like, well, come, I'm going to eat a Snickers, because you eat chalfstam, whatever. It is a different topic in itself. Right? You're going to go and you're going to say, I'm going to eat this, and because of that, blah, 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 blah. No. You follow directions to the T. Why? Because you know that they're the specialist on it. Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says that if you want to have a safe mission in this world, says you follow the Torah. You follow the instructions that God, who created the world, told you, this is what you need to do. This is what you don't need to do. And if you do this, you get rewarded. If you do this, you get punished. Be like, well, I can do better. Like, you don't know any better. God created the world, told you exactly what you need to do. But what if you don't understand? Imagine an astronaut says, well, I never understood the reason of why I have to push this button, so I didn't push this button. Does that make sense? Be like, no, regardless of whether you understand the reason or not, the specialist told you push it, you push it. The specialist told you to jump, you jump. You float, you float. You do whatever the specialist tells you to do. The specialist in this world is God. God created everything. God told you to do this, you do this. You get rewarded or you get punished. That's just as simple as the way that it works. Yeah?
With doing this or that, is that like mitzvot and avera?
Yeah.
So what about all the extra stuff? Not the 4 inches when you're doing tzniut, all the extra things that people take on, are those things they're getting rewarded for?
They will get rewarded for. Someone who does extra.
Who doesn't do the extras are getting punished for?
Not necessarily. If it's extra, and you said some things over there which may or may not be extra. I don't want to get into it because we'll be here for a very, very long time. But if what we need to do is what the Torah says. The extra stuff, if you want to be more stringent upon yourself, a blessing will come on you. But the people that don't bring the extra doesn't mean they're going to get punished for it. They're not just you're going to get an extra blessing on it. But the people that violate it, that don't do the extra, they don't violate it. But now it's a whole different question. What do you define as extra? What do you define as not extra?
So what's considered what we get rewarded for? What's considered what we get punished for? Just the plain, simple mitzvot and avera.
We get rewarded for the good things that we do, and we get punished for the bad things that we do. Your question is what is good and what is bad. That's really what your question is. So we follow the Torah. What the Torah says is good, you do is good. What the Torah says is bad, is you do is bad. Let's say, and I don't want to use an example, but I will use an example, and I know I shouldn't use this example. Let's say you don't wear a shtreimel. Right? Does anybody here know what a shtreimel is? Does anybody here not know what a shtreimel is? Right? Basically, you murder a fox and you wrap it around your head. Right? So and nothing against them. Like, may they all be blessed. But let's say you don't wear a shtreimel. Are you going to get punished for that?
No, it's not your family minhag.
That could be one of the many answers that I would give, yeah. So that's fine. You're not going to get punished for doing that. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing that.
Do you get reward for wearing that?
I'm not going to go into that topic, but because, what?
How about a kippah?
Kippah you're required to at this point in time, yeah. Yeah, kippah you have to require to. Thank you for averting the subject. So,
Halacha, there are halachic guidelines that from the Torah, and if you follow that, everything else is up to personal background and situation.
it depends. So we're going now. It's a requirement, and now.
Wouldn't kippah be in your,
Why
like,
now?
your community, what they do?
Why now? We could go into this topic, but we will be here for another 45 minutes. So we could. What was your question on the community?
I thought it would be on the community. So some communities don't wear wigs, you don't have to wear one. Some communities don't have to wear that, you don't have to wear one.
Well, there's first of all, hair covering is from the Torah. Just because some communities don't wear wigs, it's just because some communities don't listen to the Torah. It doesn't mean that it's right.
But I thought you would follow that community.
No, because they're not following the Torah. You don't follow the community. Be like, well, my grandfather, my great grandfather, were all sinners, so I'm just following my. It doesn't work that way.
That's not the community. That's your own personal. Who are
Doesn't matter community or not. If they're going against the Torah, it doesn't matter. Wig is a requirement biblically, not rabbinically. It's a biblically, not a wig. I'm sorry, a hair covering. A hair covering, wig or not, that's another whole topic in itself. But a hair covering is a requirement from the Torah. If your community doesn't follow it, my personal suggestion would be find a new community, because that community is going to be sharing a very, very wonderful place in the next world. And when I say wonderful, they could get a great tan. Great tan.
No, but I thought that
Instantly.
even though the community doesn't follow, then you have to respect the community and follow it. I'm talking about the entire community. She's
No.
talking about the
But not when it's
Yeah, I mean, not when it violates the Torah. Not when it violates the Torah. So if something violates the Torah, two different things. If there's a community that doesn't go to the Torah, but they're saying this is my community thing, then you get out of that community as fast as possible, because that community is not going to be good for you at any. That's not a community. It's just something that's just like misrepresenting Torah. It's like a reform. So you can say the reform is their community and they're fine whatever they're doing. No, they're misrepresenting Torah, and there's a very, very special place for them.
Some communities have religious people and non-religious people, so you could find people in your community that are religious.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, we can't generalize communities and what they do. But if a community at large says, listen, as a community we don't have to cover our hair, then you say, as a Jew, I am out of here. And then you can write your rap as you're walking out, right? It's not there is minhagim, yes, there's customs, and then there's halachot. When you're going against the Torah, you cannot say, well, my minhag is not to listen to the halacha. My minhag is to eat, on Pesach chametz, and be like, your minhag is, what minhag spells also, right? You jumble the letters. Minhag is Gehenom. The same. There's some people that go and they use minhagim to go and bring themselves into Gehenom. But in any case, a lot of these questions are great questions, but we're going to be here a very long time. Let me just finish this, and we'll open up for whatever it is that you want to talk about, the kippah, or whatever it is, hair covering, or whatever it is that you want to deal with. So, I want to share with you one final part on Rabbi Mordechai Becher brings this down based off of Moshe Shapiro. He says this world is known as Olam Hazeh. The next world is known as Olam Haba. The question is, who here speaks Hebrew? Only one person? Olam, or two people? Olam Hazeh. The other one you'll say would be Olam Ahu. Be this world and that world. Why is it the correct vernacular, if you want to use the opposite, is Olam Hazeh and Olam Ahu? Why is it Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba? Olam Hazeh is this world, Olam Haba is the next world. Which would be Olam Hazeh, this world, and Olam Ahu, that world, the next world. Why is it Olam Haba? Says Rav Moshe Shapiro that everything that you do in this world creates your next world. Meaning that your Olam Haba comes mi Olam Hazeh. Your next world comes from Olam Hazeh, meaning that everything that you do is creating your Olam Haba. That is why it's not Olam Ahu, it's Olam Haba. It's Olam Haba mi Olam Hazeh.
So you're literally creating yourself.
You're creating yourself. The kevel is a grave. Kevel is a grave, but a kevel also means a womb, as we see in Pesachas HaKever, in Gemara and Shabbat, speaks about it. The kevel is also a womb and also a grave. What is the connection between a womb and a grave? The mother, when she's raising a child inside of her, when she's pregnant, Everything that she does affects a child. So if she smokes and drinks, it affects a child. Even happiness or sadness affects a child. Everything affects a child. It's just like the mother affects her child that's growing in her womb. So too, a person is affecting his world. When he's in this world, he's creating his next world. Meaning that we're pregnant. Think about it this way: we're pregnant with our future selves. Wow. We are the ones who decide how we are. So if you smoke, think about it. A woman smokes in this world. She takes there's a certain drug. What is it? I don't know if it's a crack baby, whatever it's called. Like if a woman takes certain, did I just take a right turn? Whatever. So you know what I'm talking about. For certain, there's certain drugs. If a woman takes, a baby is born. I think it's heroin. If a baby is born addicted to heroin. Addicted to that thing, because the mother creates it. So too with the way that you're living your life, you're pregnant with yourself. What you're doing is what you're affecting yourself in the next world. It's this, whatever you do, everything is based on reward and punishment. You're living your life good in this world, you're going to create for yourself a good and healthy life in the next world. You're living yourself a sick, disgusting, disturbed life in this world, then that's what you're going to have in the next world. It all depends on what you do. So let's do a quick recap, and then we'll open up for any other questions that we want to deal with and answer with. When somebody goes and somebody says, like when you're dealing with reward and punishment, a very, very famous question asked is, where's the reward and punishment in this world? So we gave numerous answers of why the Torah does not specify that there is no reward. You don't see the Torah speak straight out about the reward. Number one, we don't know that we cannot even comprehend it. It's beyond our comprehension. Number two, we don't even know where we're going and we're trying to explain something. We don't even have the vocabulary to go and explain it. It's so beyond us. Additionally, we also don't have when we're dealing with something in the Torah, we're dealing with something that the Torah goes and you could prove it. You could go and validate it. We're not speaking about hypotheticals. And whatever we're up to, number 3, 4, wherever, when the Torah speaks about something, the Torah, speaks about something that you could relate to. If it's something so much beyond your relation, so much beyond there's nothing to even talk about. And if the Torah would say about it, it all depends on your perception. Just like the people that perceive what the Kotel is, people that perceive what the Niagara Falls is, people perceive what the Grand Canyon is, whatever anything is, it's all based on your perception. So for numerous reasons, the Torah does not specify the reward. Also, because the ultimate way to serve God is not for the reward. The ultimate to serve God is because that's what you're supposed to be doing. As if that you deserve the reward, you don't deserve the reward. Everything that God gives you is already a benefit for you. Everything that you're doing, you're not deserving anything. It's only based on God's mercy and kindness that God's giving you a reward for something that God gave you the ability to do. So now, when we think about all these things, when we think about the idea of punishment, and also something very important to remember, that people think, okay, God wants to punish us. God does not want to punish you. In fact, how do we know that? We know that the punishment is 500 times less than the reward. That is why you can never say, okay, you have people be like, okay, I did something wrong. I'm already going to Gehenna. I'm already going to hell. So what's the difference? Let me just do everything bad. It has two separate calculations. You have a calculation of good and you have a calculation of bad. If you go and you give up all your good because of the bad that you did, then it's somebody you're losing so much. You're losing 500 times. That is why that the good never ever cancels out the bad. It's not possible if you do something good today and then you do something bad today and be like, okay, listen, I scored even. No. You have 500 times good over the one time the bad that you did. That's the level. God wants to bestow goodness upon you. God wants to reward you that it's worth 500 times greater than the punishment that you're going to be getting. And finally, when you're going and you're getting punished, generally speaking, punishment is not eternity. Reward is for eternity. However, there's some people that are very good in what they do in their sins, and they're able to go and get punished for eternity. But generally speaking, you don't get punished for eternity. You get punished for a certain period of time, 12 months maximum, right? That's what we say Kaddish for 11 months. And then you go into the next world and you get all your reward. The purpose of everything here in this world is you're pregnant with yourself. So the question is how do you want you to come out? Do you want to come out good? Do you want to come out healthy? Or do you want to come out sick on heroin? Any questions? Good way to end the class, right? Questions, yeah.
All our rewards and punishments are in the next world, not yet.
Oh, good. All right, we're starting an engine right now because it's a topic in itself. So there are people. So the question is, are all the good that you're going to get is only in the next world? Can you get a good in this world? So.
No, my question is more like if something good happens to us here, is that part of our reward, or we just get a good?
Not necessarily. Oh, so do you get if something good happens? You say, does that come out from your merits? Not necessarily. If, let's say, you put yourself in a dangerous situation, and then you get saved from that dangerous situation, that could be removing from your merit. However, if you're going, and if you're living your life and good comes out from you, that doesn't detract from your good. Unless you're a very wicked person, and God is paying you in this world. But generally speaking, right, everybody who's listening to this class is obviously a very great person, righteous person, probably one of the 36 righteous people, in the world. So when you're dealing with that, if God gives you good, that doesn't detract from your reward in the world to come.
But when good happens to us, is that a reward or just
God is giving you, you could say that it's a reward, like you get reward for something you did good, so you're going to get reward for it in this world also, but it doesn't detract for you. Think of it as like a salesman, it's part of your expenses. You're doing good, whatever, utilize whatever the company credit card that you want. Doesn't detract.
Also the opposite.
And I'll get you afterwards, yeah.
But also the opposite with suffering. Is suffering always a punishment?
No. So suffering is also not always a punishment, but generally speaking it is. There is, yes, sometimes suffering is a test, sometimes suffering is to get your reward, but generally speaking, suffering is a punishment. Generally speaking, but there are times that you're not. That's what the Gemara says, that if someone sees that suffering is coming, go and search your deeds. See what you're doing something wrong, because it must be that it's coming for something. However, the Gemara goes on and says, if you don't find this, it's not because of the Bitul Torah, the Gemara goes on to a whole list of things, then you must say that it's coming suffering out of love, meaning that God loves you, He's giving you suffering, and it's going to give you greater reward. But that is such a high level, such a high level, that if suffering comes upon yourself, you have to figure out, what do I need to do, what do I need to change? Maybe I need to fix something to remove this suffering. Yeah?
Also, some people, they do go through suffering that is not logically understandable why they should go through it, so it must be that it's like for a Gilgal or something, because they simply didn't do that.
Gilgal is the easiest answer. You're right. Gilgal is the easiest answer they can give. But no, I agree with you.
Suffering goes beyond logic.
You're right. We don't understand it. We don't know the reason for it. But the last thing that I'll give you a warning that you should do. If, let's say, someone's suffering and they're going through really, really hard time, never ever tell them, you know why you're suffering? Because in a previous life you are a wicked person, and not wicked good, like wicked bad. You're like a bad person.
No,
so
I find it comforting, because otherwise logically it's not understandable.
It is, and you're right, and I find it comforting as well. I think it's such a secret to creation that we have this ability to understand that
I think it's like we don't understand it, so it must be that there's a different purpose for it, because
we could say that without going to Gilgul. Kol man David Achman ala Tavavit. Everything that God does is for the great, or Gamzul Tova, whichever way that you want to go with it. It's a high level, yes, but everything that happens, there's a reason for it and good for it. You want to go a lower level is to say reincarnation, but a higher level is that everything God does for the best, regardless of whatever it is.
That doesn't make the person feel like they're like why is this good? It must be that it's atoning for something. Like, you want to feel like this is taking care of something. It's not just for no reason.
What if there's attitude? Somebody who always is positive won't actually have anything wrong with their life because everything is positive. So they're in a terrible situation, they'll see a positive outcome. However, so there's never anything wrong. Versus the same situation, someone did always everything negative. That's why you have two people, one commit suicide and
right.
one.
You're on fire today. Well, you're like, really good question. You're like, so I'll tell you, what you're saying is so. We have to speak about this for like a few minutes, because that's like crazy stuff. So what happens if, let's say, somebody's going through suffering, but because they're so optimistic, they're like, I love God, everything is awesome. A round of applause, right? A round of applause for God, please. God created so much suffering for me, and it's only good. So that person is not getting the hint. You're like, listen, you got something bad that's going on. You have to fix it. However, there's something very interesting when someone has something bad that happens to them, and they accept it. This is based off Chassidut, right? So if something bad happens, and they say, listen, I love God, they're so optimistic. They're like, everything is great. The fact that they had to go through some sort of suffering, but the fact that they just accepted it with kindness has the ability to remove that decree. Has the ability to remove all the bad that comes out for it. So really what we could say is really...
Someone gets to that level. I want to meet someone like that.
You go, the most famous person is, you look up, was it Rabbi Elimelech? Reb Zusha ben Apali. Rabbi Elimelech Milozhinsk's brother. He was known, he had a very, very difficult life. He was very poor, tons and tons of suffering. And one guy one chassid went over to his rabbi and says, Rabbi, you have to explain to me how I deal with suffering. So he says, I can't answer, you have to go to Reb Zusha ben Apali. So he goes and he travels to find Reb Zusha. And he finds Reb Zusha and he sees this guy's house, this rabbi's house, is so broken that homeless people wouldn't even walk into it. Like, it was a broken of the broken. And he knocks on the door, and the door swings open, and then it swings back in, and he knocks again, and it swings back open again, and then he knocks again, the door falls apart, and just like crumbles into pieces. And, Reb Zusha comes out smiling, and it's raining, and there's buckets collecting everywhere, and Reb Zusha's like, here's my wells, and he says, my rabbi came to me and said that I have to come to you if I want to know why do I have so much suffering in my life. So Reb Zusha, who had tremendous amount of suffering, he says, why would your rabbi come to me? Why would your rabbi tell you to come to me? It's like, I never had a bad day in my life. I'd be like, do you live here? Or are you what's going on? And he's like, no, this is my home. They're like, what do you mean you never had a bad day in your life? Look at your home. But the rabbi, in his mind, never had a bad day in his life. He cannot see bad. So some people, they cannot see bad, even if bad is happening to them, because they realize that everything that happens is for the best. They realize that everything that God does, everything that God does for the best. That in itself has such a power to remove bad decrees, meaning that this is something very, very important. And it's so important that it was worth it for each and every single one of you to come today to this class, even if you got nothing what I said so far, just this last part, it's worth it that you came for that. That if you're having a bad day or bad time and you go to God and you say, God, listen, I don't know what's the reason that I'm having this hard day. What's the reason I'm having this hard year or hard life or whatever it is. But one thing I accept everything. He said, I accept it, I love you, and I know everything that happens is for the best. I accept it. That in itself, that has so much power, it has enough power to remove all your bad decrees. That's the power that it has. So the skula that it has, you want to know what a skula is to remove bad, accept it. Say, listen, God, I deserve it. I know I deserve it. I thank you for it. When you go and you thank God for it, God's going to, that removes that decree. The most powerful thing. So I know it was one of you two, whatever it is, both of you, thank you for bringing this up, because it's such a crazy skula that people are always looking for skulas to get out of thing. And some people are just very bitter people. It's very difficult to speak to bitter people. I deal with it more than I would like to, and you speak to them like they're angry at everybody. They're angry at God. They're angry at you for helping them. They're angry at their parents. They're angry at everybody. They're just angry people. They're just like bitter people. The truth is, we cannot judge them because they go through a very hard life. But if they just know the secret of it all, is if you just go and you accept it, and you say, listen, God, I love you. I know that you care about it. And you care about me. And everything is for the best. And I accept it. 80% of your decree just flushes down the toilet. If we just realize the power of that.
I have to try that, but
try it.
He's a hard, he's really smart. Like, when I start being appreciative, he's like, why are you being appreciative? Like, you have this and this and this. And
just like, remember we said that you have 500 times greater good than bad that you paid for it? So too in your life, if you look at it, you have 500 times greater good than the bad that happens.
It's hard to see that.
So you open your eyes and you see the fact that you're breathing, you're walking, you're talking, you're able to eat, and you're smelling. We just did 5. And then 5 huge things, right? It's hard. It's very difficult. You can't tell a bitter person and be like, well, be happy that you're able to walk. Be like, what are you talking about being able to walk? I blah, 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 blah. And they go, so you can't tell, the last thing you want to tell a bitter person is like, hey, don't be sad, be happy. Right, so you have to be very careful on the words that you say, because people that are bitter people and people that are going through suffering in life, what you're saying, they hear very differently than what you hear it. So you have to say very, very sensitive, because they're an open wound. So when you're an open wound, you touch it, it hurts. For the general people, you tell them, hey, be happy. They'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll be happy. That's a good idea. Let me try that. So the next time they get a parking ticket, they're like, yeah, everything's for the best, everything's for God. But meanwhile, somebody lost their business, their family, their children. There's so much suffering that goes in. How can you tell them to be happy? You don't tell them to be happy, and you have to do it in a very smart way, and it all depends on the situation. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just listen. That's all you can do. And as much as you want to say, hey, be happy, just because you're 500 years old and you're not married yet, don't worry, the right one is coming right around the corner. God had a plan for you. You can't always say that. So there's different, everybody's in a different situation. You have to deal with every situation as its own. It's tough.
Is it possible to accept the suffering but still want better?
Yeah.
For better?
100%. You accept the suffering, say I deserve it, and then you pray. Praying means you can pray for whatever it is that you want. Doesn't negate one another. You don't want to say, hey, God, bring it on. Bring on the suffering. You want to say, bring on the blessing.
No, you're not supposed
You're not supposed to, right? You're not supposed to. You want to bring on the blessing. You want to pray for the stuff that's good. Yeah.
What about like your free choices? Not in terms of doing mitzvot and averot, just life things.
In what aspect?
Like making a decision, a life decision, which is basically your free choice. You don't know whether it's right or wrong, and then it could be wrong, and then consequences and punishments could come with that.
Why don't you know if it's right or wrong?
No, so it's very.
Like,
There's
you
many
don't know,
things in
like,
life.
making the wrong
Right.
choice
Let's say
and
somebody,
getting
let's say a job
consequences.
opportunity, a person
Right.
marriage,
Right.
moving to a certain place. There are many decisions in a person's life, and it happens sporadically, where you have to make a huge decision.
Right.
And you might not realize how huge it is, the profession that you decide to do it, the marriage partner that you decide to do it. You realize most of your major decisions is when you're dumb and young. Right? Like, you don't have idea. You're like, yeah, whatever, let's do it. And you go through like major life choices when you're young, and you're not, So are you held responsible for the decisions that you made? I think that's what you're asking, right? Based on your own free will of when you are younger, let's say. So let's say you got married to somebody, and it's a very difficult marriage. Or let's say you went into panasah for something, you went into a job for something, and it's a very difficult panasah. So it's very difficult for me to answer in a straight out answer, but the way that it works, let's speak about money, because money is a very, very easy answer, to say. So you have, let's say, somebody that goes into a certain profession, and they go into profession, and this profession, if you look at what is it called, salary, whatever, you figure out how much salary they make only $50,000 a year. That's as much as they make. And you're like, why did I do that when I was younger? Why did I go into this profession? I should have gone into something that makes more money. That has nothing, your free choice has nothing to do with how much money you're going to make. The fact that you went to this profession doesn't matter. If, there are people that, let's say, for example, I know a dietitian, right? I don't know how much dietitians make, but they're not raking it in as like a doctor's level. But yet I know dietitians that are making a crazy amount of money. Crazy amount. And then I know doctors that are making negative amount of money. It doesn't matter because of your previous decisions is that going to dispel your future and how much money you're going to make. No, there are people that go into a profession that would think that would make them nothing, and they become multi-billionaires and multi-millionaires, and there are people that come into a profession thinking that they're going to make so many and they're going to make nothing. So it doesn't matter that aspect. And even in marriage, sometimes you get married to somebody and you thought that it was good, and then later you find out like, oh, this guy has so many issues in it. It's not necessarily that. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's no blanket answer that can be given for that, but there is God that's overseeing everything. And even if you made a decision, and even if you made it bad, and even though you need to go through that particular type of suffering. I know I'm speaking in code a lot, but if you go through the tshuva process, let's say that you need, things can be changed. The things that you think that you can never change, things that your life you think is already spelled out for you, that you're going to have a tremendous amount of suffering, or you foresee it. It doesn't necessarily mean that. There's tremendous amount of blessing that could come from any situation. Any question? Yeah. Oh, we're going well. We're going. Yeah. Look at that. Okay. Good. By the way, if anybody does, though, you don't feel like there's no obligation to stay here for the questions. If you want, you're more than welcome to. But we do not curse anybody that leaves early, or all the blessing that comes onto everybody. Yeah.
So, Shabbat, you said that people get cut off, they don't keep it. So, what if someone didn't keep it when they were younger, because their families are religious, and then they became, like me, I keep Shabbat now, so was I supposed to make teshuvah, like do teshuvah?
You still do. So let me repeat the question, because that's a good question. Let's say somebody was born and raised in a non-religious environment, and they never kept Shabbat, and then all of a sudden they became older, they became wiser, they started researching, they realized that it's the right thing to do, and they started keeping Shabbat. Do they have to do repentance on the previous years that they didn't keep Shabbat? And also, does that affect them in the future? Does that affect the karet, is suffering that comes upon a person? So yes, one person needs to do tshuva on something, even though if it was a mistake, whatever it was that they didn't know, tshuva still needs to be done. Like the saying goes, always better to be safe than sorry. Tshuva is a simple process, always better to be safe than sorry. Regarding the punishment that one has to go through with it, we could really go on a long time in it, and I don't, because of the late hour, I don't want to go into it.
Are you responsible for it, or wasn't your choice?
Well, it depends on what age. Once you become a level of you're accepting a mitzvah, then you are responsible for it to a certain degree. To what degree? I'm not God, I'm not God's accountant, it's all in God's hand. But what you do need to realize is that, A, you should do tshuva on it. The tshuva process should be fairly simple. And you should also realize that a lot of, let's say, the suffering that you need to go through, you most likely went through it already. Because of the fact that when somebody who never kept Shabbat started keeping Shabbat, it's very difficult. They go through suffering for that. That already reduces from the suffering that they needed to go through for that. So your question is a very, very broad question, and it all depends on the thing. But in generally speaking, you do tshuva, and that's all you have to worry about, just the tshuva part.
So what if like the person wanted to keep Shabbat like the whole life and like they just didn't? Like isn't that suffering in itself?
That somebody who wanted to keep Shabbat and they weren't able to, what does that mean that they couldn't? So it depends why not.
Yeah, like their parents didn't let you, like whatever it was.
I'm actually dealing with quite a few of those right now. And I can't...
Suffering. Yeah, that's suffering in itself. Yeah. So, like,
I can't even begin...
Let her wear a skirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get old enough and you become independent and
Right.
you have your own apartment and you're big as well.
Yeah, they're not going to get
I'm not
You don't get your own apartment.
Like I'm
If
still
I'm
living
30
in
years
my house.
old.
Oh, we're not talking about 30. We're talking about
Now. Like,
Put it this way. So
until 25.
when you're dealing with parent... yes, I know exactly what you're talking about because I have quite a few cases that I'm dealing with that. Quite a few cases I'm dealing with that. They want to keep Shabbat, they want to keep modesty, they can't do it because their parents don't let them. What does that mean? I'm going to get myself into trouble if I start speaking. But you're still, let's put it this way, you're still required. Let me keep it very, very, very bland. You still have a requirement that you need to follow it. You follow the Torah, not your parents. How and what and when? Reach out to me. We'll deal with it on a private, phone conversation.
Start keeping it. That kind of like takes away, like.
Per se, it does. Yeah, to a certain level.
you don't know if you're really keeping it because there's these little.
Well, you learn.
Like.
Once you're starting the tshuva process, right? So that's something that you work on.
But does everybody keep it fully even nowadays?
That's what I was.
Every single person keep it?
If you know the halachot, then yes. Does every single person keep everything ever? No. But it depends. If you're going and you're working on it and you're studying the laws and you buy the books on Shabbat and you read what you need to do and what you're not allowed to do, then yeah, you're keeping it. If you're not and you're just winging it, then maybe yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
So with the kids being kept from their parents, I never understood it. Like obviously every kid has their own behavior. So yeah, if they decide to do something, like they're going in the wrong ways of their parents. Like you saw all the time, so they went in the ways of their parents. But still, why are they being punished by their parents?
If they're following the parents' footsteps, they get punished from them and the parents. If they don't,
it's not like, yeah, they're making their own behavior, but it's not. But why are they being punished? It's not. It wasn't them that did it. They may not have even been alive when their parents was doing it. So how are they punished for what their parents did?
So first of all, everything is measure for measure. Everything in life is measure for measure. Do you get, if let's say you have ancestors that did something good, do you benefit from that? You do. Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, we pray it every time. Okay, Avraham, okay, Yitzhak, Yaakov. Everything goes from measure for measure. However, when you're dealing with that, the measure that God goes is 2,000 generations for the good, but only 4 generations for the bad.
Still, why? I can understand.
Why is it measure for measure?
Because I know good, like someone does, it's spilled into the world, I understand, and the same with bad, it can affect people, but like, okay, but it's, why is someone being punished for something someone else did?
So first of all, you have to define what is the punishment level that you're getting.
I don't know, there could be suffering, there could be, I don't know, there's struggling, whatever.
So just like, let's first pause this because there's, we want to clean it up over here. So just like...
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.